Today we have my most interesting viewer. Not that you're not interesting, but this guy right here always leaves the most interesting comments on the Hair Loss Hope videos. And every time I read them, I go, wow, that's really insightful. We should share this stuff with everybody because it's always helpful for me. And I feel like I know kind of a lot about this. So today we have Jay International on Hair Loss Hope, and he's going to give you a bit of his story and some of his insights. And let me just kind of quickly tell you why it's so important. So I watched a video on this guy's life condensed to an hour, and I was absolutely captivated. An hour-long video, I thought I was going to turn it off in the first 10 minutes or so, and I watched this and I couldn't wait to finish it. It was so interesting. I think Jay's been somewhere in the range of through 5 to 10 hair transplants, and he's actually missing 25% approximately of his brain. So this is Jay International. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show, David.
So first I wanted to talk about body hair transplants, because that was one of the first things you said. You think that you're one of the first people to ever have a body hair transplant done. And as you know, I just recently had some of that done. Do you want to start there, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's start there. That's as good as anything. So I'm not the absolute first, because I remember actually watching a video about body hair transplants from a doctor in Australia that I visited. So I'm not the absolute first, but I am one of the first. And from some parts of my body, I may actually be the first. So I went to this particular doctor in Australia. We started taking from my scalp, and due to my hair characteristics and previous surgeries, it ended up that we had to take it from the body. In that session, we took from my chest, my abdomen, and my legs.
Wow. So anything in particular, and then we'll get back into all the other surgeries you've had and what you've learned, but anything in particular about body hair transplants that you feel like you've learned?
One thing you need to be careful about is the amount of anesthesia they're using when you start doing body hair transplants, because if it's a strip, that's just on one spot on your head. But with the body, they start putting anesthesia in a very large area, and that can raise your adrenaline. So as a risk factor, body hair is great, but you got to be careful about the anesthesia. That's one point that people should be aware of. Another thing aside from that is there's, I guess, a different amount of pain to inject it in different parts of the body. But another interesting thing is both the healing and the growth. So different parts of the body are going to heal at different rates. So far, everything has healed very well. But because I've had different hair from different areas, it's been very interesting. My head is like this garden of experimentation. And so I have this chest hair and abdomen hair, and it'll grow at different speeds and different lengths.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'm happy to have any hair, but that's something to keep in mind. If you could have only scalp, that's always going to be the best.
Yes.
Fortunately, that's not always an option.
Wow, so your body hair actually, based on where it came from, actually grows at different rates after you get it cut?
So there's some theories, what they might call recipient area dominance, that there's more veins and blood on your head, so that can maybe make it a little bit longer, but it's not going to be a miracle. It's not going to change color. If it's curly, it's going to still be curly, and it's not going to be as robust as head hair. One exception to that, within reason, is beard hair, which I only recently even knew was possible, and I've also recently had from the beard. Beard hair, on your face can grow quite long, so on your head, that can grow just as long as head hair. But a thing to keep in mind from that is it tends to be more thick and wiry, so it is not ideal for the hairline.
Yes, that's what I've told. It's great for coverage because it is generally thicker, right? But you can't use it on a hairline. That will look awful. Not to mention just kind of too much of it. I mean, it stands out. So even the little, I've just started having a little bit growing, and even before the grafts started, falling out as they do, I had people take a look, take a look at that beard hair, and they could pick it out that it was a different hair. It was a different kind of hair.
Yes. Right in the middle of my hair on the vertex, I'm trying to show them, this is all beard hair, exclusively beard hair. Hopefully I've captured that. So there is a slightly different look. Another thing that was interesting, it's very typical. Within a couple weeks, the hair sheds. For some reason, the beard hair, it didn't seem to all shed. I guess it's just so sturdy. A portion of it just kept growing. And eventually it did shed, but that actually made me excited. I was like, this is some very strong and robust hair, and that's going to provide some great coverage.
As you probably know, transplanting into a scar is a little bit more risky. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the surgeon or anything like that. It's just the way that your scar tissue and the blood vessels and everything respond to that hair. Sometimes there's actually not enough vascularity to grow hair that has been transplanted into scars.
For your viewers who probably haven't seen my video yet, I'm somewhat of a scar master.
Yeah.
I have the standard. It's somewhat the story of my life. I have the FUT scar, and unfortunately, I had a second FUT, and at one point, this scar was like an inch wide.
Wow.
So I had that, but I also had this head injury scar. And interestingly, both of those have slightly different characteristics. One is the FUT scar ended up being a little bit more keloid, where it's puffy, and the head injury scar was flatter. So I've had hair transplanted in both scars. It seemed to grow better in my head injury scar, which was flatter, and you could see it was somewhat pink color. And when at some point I had SMP, and one interesting thing about SMP, not to get too off topic, but just purely, even if you didn't use any ink, the pure act of tattooing a scar can help get rid of that color and make it healthier. So that's actually something people might want to do before they get scar transplantation. I've also had hair from my leg, and you have to be realistic about body hair. The yield is probably not going to be as high, even if there's no transection. Just the hair, if it's not as strong, I'd say from the leg hair, probably 60-70% of that hair grew, and that's not the fault of the surgeon. It's just harder to transplant.
If you could briefly tell about the number of hair transplants you've had, and then I know you wore a hair system at one point, and you've literally done, I think, everything that a person tries to do for their hair, and this all stems from a huge accident that Jay was actually shot in the head when he was a young teenager, and then lost his hair not long after that, and then he just went on this huge roller coaster of a ride, having all these different surgeries and trying these different treatments. Like, what are the things that you most wish that you would have known when you'd started?
So I also tried a dermatchin topic as well. I'd like to say I have made every mistake short of dying, and so my head is
There's
a
still
tapestry
time
of
for
Bill
that
Foley,
too, Jay.
and yeah, hopefully not. I'd like people to learn from it. I guess the main thing, and you said this in your videos, but just to repeat it, there's a good chance you're not going to get it done in one session. It might take multiple sessions. So one thing is, I always seem to want these doctors to just do it all at once. I was really, the word is desperate to cover my whole head. And they would not entirely listen to me. They'd put it more in the front, but they would spread it out. And that ended up being a waste. Because if you haven't got I don't know what the exact number is, but a certain amount of grafts per centimeter, it's pointless. So you're better off just doing it incrementally than trying to do this whole coverage thing. That's one. Another thing that I've learned from you, and we've discussed this, is just the most likely need that you need to take medication. Depending on what Norwood you ultimately would become, you could lose all your hair. You could lose the hair on the side of your head. And what happened to me is I got this hair transplanted. I went through a period where I looked great. I felt great. And then I lost nearly all that hair. Ironically, I only kept a small, very pluggy fringe in the front because I guess that was more robust. And fortunately, some of that was taken out and that fell out. So yeah, I would say educate yourself, pace yourself, and really strongly consider the need to take medication, because even if you get a transplant and you probably want to be done with it, you're probably going to need these drugs as well to preserve what you've got. I mean, that's key. You've done all this work. You want to hold on to that.
The biggest mistake that I see guys frequently making is having too a high of hopes. And just exactly what you said, that it's all going to be done in one surgery. So they're trying to get the most hair moved possible in one surgery. And I understand, of course we do, the reason that you would want that, right? They don't want to take any medication. There's kind of this, I just want to spend this money on this surgery and have everything done, and that's the end of this story, and I finish this. And actually, the guy that I know who has the best FUE result that I've ever seen has had, I think, like 11 or 12 surgeries, and all smaller surgeries. And he also is now, he actually said he had issues with finasteride, but he's now doing topical dutasteride is what's working for him, and he hasn't had any issues with that. And he has this insane result, like the head of hair that we all dream of. And it's because of that, right? He's just done so many small surgeries. He's tried out different surgeons to see which ones are the best, and really has taken his time with it, and his hair looks ridiculous.
Let's talk about another thing with the mega sessions. Everybody wants to get it done as quick as possible. It's annoying to go through this healing, shedding, and regrowth. But your scalp, a lot of people, they can only handle so many grafts at once. There's something called necrosis, where if there's too much hair, and this is a transplant of tissue, it can rob the scalp of the blood it needs, and you can scab over, and
Yes.
that'll create a new scar on your head. So there's risks with this surgery, and as much as you want to get hair right away, you got to know that it's a long game. And I've had a large number of surgeries, but some guys probably have had all that in one session. So because I have these unique scalp characteristics, myself and my doctor have chosen to pace it out more.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And yeah, the most ethical surgeons, they tell you, no, we shouldn't move that much hair. You know, that's again, I think one of the problems is that when your hopes are so high and you're in that very emotional state, you want to get it done, and you call up a place and they say, we'll do more grafts and charge you less, then that just seems like the right decision, you know? When there are all these other little factors that are at play that could be equally, if not more important, such as, did that doctor make sure that you found some kind of medication that you're okay with, that you're on, that it's gonna, is gonna help you win for the long game, or maybe they shouldn't have done any surgery on you yet because they need to strengthen your donor hair to make sure that you're gonna have a better result. Or the last one you had said, which is, oh yeah, just moving that amount of grafts. It might not be safe to move too many grafts.
I actually ended up a couple surgeons who, some didn't want to operate on me, that at the time that frustrated me, but some of these guys were really doing me a favor. So I went to this doctor in Australia. His particular reason for not wanting to operate on me is, among many other unique issues I actually have a hole in my head from my head injury. And he was concerned about something called osteomyelitis, where you get this bone infection. So he was very concerned about that, but he saw the position that strip surgery had put me in. So we talked about it. He put me on some antibiotics, and he also avoided that area. But that was a good and ethical thing, that at least he was thinking about that and trying to mitigate that problem. Eventually, you're going to find a doctor who's going to tell you what you want to hear. But you really owe it to yourself to educate yourself. Obviously, a doctor's always going to know more, but you got to come equipped as much as possible. And the other thing, we were talking about lessons, and I've seen you mention this in your videos, is even the most ethical doctor, all doctors are running a business. The pictures they show are going to be their best patient, but you don't know, that patient might have been on finasteride for a couple of years. They're a great responder to it. They have this awesome, thick and dense donor area, and they got 3,000 grafts. I want to get 3,000 grafts, and that's going to be me too. There's a spectrum of what is possible, and you may not be as high on that spectrum. So a good doctor, they're going to present their best, and you should consider that, but they should also be honest about what you personally are going to be able to experience. And you yourself should educate yourself about things like laxity and other things, that if you get FUT surgery, how your final result is going to look.
It must be frustrating for the surgeons as well, having to sort of compete with unrealistic pictures and things like that. So what I mean is that I'll even go on YouTube and I'll watch certain videos. I'm sure you've done this too. And it really takes a lot of experience and having been a patient to even see people's results correctly, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes I'll go on and I'll watch, someone will go, oh my gosh, this FUE result, this is unbelievable. It's one session. Go check this out, or go check out this person's before and after. And I'll go watch it. And I'll watch it one time through and I'll go, oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. Like, how did they possibly get that result? And I'll have to actually go back and watch the video again and watch the before and afters and really try and put it together in my mind and go like, oh, okay, well, actually, wait, no, that guy's head was actually shaved in the middle. So it looked like he was super bald. it looked like he had a horseshoe baldness, but actually, if I look closely, they shaved his head in the middle, and actually, there's a lot of hair there. So he might have actually had, if we had seen him with a full head, like grown out head of hair, his hair might have actually looked pretty good already. It's just that it's shaved like he's a bald guy. Have you seen like things like this? And you'll have to sort of go back and like double check it.
Absolutely. So there's so many things. The length of hair, sometimes hair will be wet in the before photo and dry in the after photo. It'll be combed forward and combed backwards. So a true apples to apples comparison can be hard to get. The best doctors are going to have the exact same angle, the exact same lighting and length, high resolution. And if you don't see that, you should ask for it. Maybe even meet the patient in person if possible. But you can't just go in with wishful thinking. And some people, they want to just go to the doctor that is geographically closest to them, and sure,
Yeah.
that's great if that's possible. That's not always going to be the best. You need to go to the best doctor. There's so much at stake, and it's much easier to be bald than to fix a bad hair transplant.
Yeah.
Another thing, and everybody's cost conscious, but the cheapest is not always the best. A lot of times that premium price comes with some value, not always, but you shouldn't let price alone dictate things. And sometimes people travel to other countries for some type currency arbitrage to get a cheaper price. And I will say in Thailand, it is significantly cheaper here. But I actually interviewed a couple doctors, and the doctor I ended up going with, she was one of the most expensive. And I didn't just say, oh, you're the most expensive, but she had the best tools, the best experience. And while it is still cheap in the United States, I didn't go with the cheapest one simply because they were cheaper. I went with who I thought was the best doctor. I mean, I've seen $1 for everything, $1 for every graft.
Wow.
And again, you're going to wish you didn't pay that money if you get a bad result.
Anything else that you'd like to add, Jay? I just want to encourage people first to make sure that they go check out your video. It's an hour-long video, but it flies by because Jay's story is so interesting. What a life he's lived. Anything else that you'd like to add?
I do hope that people watch and learn and enjoy the video. That was a part one. Pretty soon I'm going to be chronicling my experience. I've actually been recording every couple of weeks of my current hair transplant. So in the past, I believe I had about 4,000 grafts, and unfortunately I lost those. But I actually, due to advances in FUE, I've actually had 8,800 more. I just have that much body hair, and wow. I still could probably get another 3,000 or 4,000. So that's a miracle. So
that is wild.
I'd love to hear people's feedback, and your channel and channels like it. I just would spend as much time as you can educating yourself. And while it's a seemingly simple surgery and the risk is low, it is not risk-free. So it can change your life. It could be great, but take your time.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jay. It's awesome talking to you, and I always really enjoy reading your comments on the videos that I post because I learn something from them every time.
Thank you for that, and thank you for having me on your channel.